When I first entered this House as the representative for Newmarket Aurora, I had no idea how much our day-to-day lives would change, including those here in the House of Commons. And I'm willing to bet that none of us did either. We all had to learn and act quickly to make sure that Canadians were safe, supported, and brought back home. And while it can be difficult to see what's in front of us as we are dealing with it, the picture becomes clearer the more you learn, the more you experience, and the more you reflect. It's been almost 20 months since we were told to go home, go digital, protect ourselves, our staff, our families, and our communities from an unknown virus at that time. We'd had time to adapt and to pivot. We've now learned that the challenges that we have faced with this pandemic have also highlighted the need and the opportunity to build better, fairer, and a more inclusive Canada for every single Canadian. And as I see it, the speech from the throne we're debating today outlines much of what has been learned and much of what Canadians have asked for. And my duty as the member for Newmarket Aurora is to bring our local perspective on what's being presented to Canadians as the government's priorities in the 44th Parliament. So I am honoured to stand in this House and share what my constituents have told me are their priorities, the same priorities that we see in the speech from the throne. In my riding and across Canada, we've made significant progress against COVID-19. And I'm proud to share that in York Region, where my riding is located, 86.5% of eligible residents aged 12 and older are now fully vaccinated. And from the start, our number one priority has been to keep the pandemic under control and to finish the job on the vaccines. We've secured the next generation for COVID-19 vaccines, the boosters and the pediatric doses, and we will continue to encourage everyone who can to get vaccinated as soon as possible. And as we turn the corner on this pandemic, our government will take the lessons learned to build an even better healthcare system. We must improve access to mental health and addictions treatment, clear the backlog on procedures, and strengthen long-term care conditions. This will require us to work together in this House, but also with provincial and territory partners to get the job done. Our recovery from this pandemic provides us with an opportunity to rebuild an economy that is more resilient and works for everyone. And thanks to our government's measures, employment is already back to the pre-pandemic levels, and we have been able to transition to a more targeted support to be provided, help for those who still need it. And now is the time to focus on the work needed to make life more affordable for Canadians. A Canada-wide early learning childcare system is key to lowering costs for families and helping parents return to the workforce. A mother of three in my riding once shared with me that had a national childcare system been in place when she had her children, she would have been able to keep her job, to purchase a home, and most importantly, raise her children together with her husband rather than working opposite schedules. For her and many others with similar stories, I'm hopeful that my home province of Ontario will soon see an agreement on childcare. And for her and many others like her, that our government is going to take action on housing affordability and put home ownership back in reach for Canadians. As we look to rebuild our economy, we must also look to make sure that it is more inclusive and diverse. We're making it easier for women and vulnerable groups to access training to help them gain strengthened and programmed skilled needs to re-enter the labor market. We must continue to work towards ending systemic racism, sexism, and discrimination in our workplaces, schools, and our communities. True equality makes our communities and our economy stronger and more resilient. No one should miss out on an opportunity to get ahead because of their gender, who they love, where they come from, what language they speak, who they pray to, or the color of their skin. And because every Canadian deserves to feel safe and welcome in their own communities, we are continuing to work with supporting organizations who provide critical services to those who are victims of gender-based violence and discrimination. Madam Speaker, I want the residents of Newmarket Aurora, and indeed all Canadians, to feel safe in places they have chosen to call home. The safety of Canadians is non-negotiable. And speaking of safety, Madam Speaker, climate change is the biggest threat that we are facing. We know that there may still be some in the House who may still not believe this is true, but you can't argue the facts. From an increase in floods and fires to cold winters and hotter summers, climate change is real, and its impacts are already being felt. This isn't news, and in fact, since 2015, our government has invested roughly $60 billion towards fighting climate change by means of investing in clean technologies, public transit, zero-emissions charging stations, and more. We will continue to invest in our oil and gas workers and industry to cut pollution while making a green economy that is more inclusive of them. We have the raw materials and the skilled workforce needed to produce clean products that will make Canada a global leader. But, Mr. Speaker, as we do this, we must also consider the important relationship Indigenous peoples share with the land on which we live. Much can be learned from them, and we have a responsibility to work with our Indigenous partners to learn from, to protect, and to respect traditional knowledge. And it's in that spirit of understanding and partnership with Indigenous peoples that we renew a commitment to advance reconciliation. As a parent and a grandparent, I cannot fathom the atrocity of knowing I might never see my children again because they were taken away from me, from my home, by the government. That anguish, pain, and overwhelming discrimination has faced Indigenous parents and children for decades, and unfortunately is still faced today. As a country and a government, we have the responsibility to make sure Indigenous communities have the support they need to keep their families together, to assess timely and culturally appropriate health care services, to address the overrepresentation of Indigenous peoples in our penal institutions and welfare systems, and to ensure fair and equitable compensation for those harmed by the First Nations Child and Family Services Program. We have a responsibility to accelerate the work that we've already committed to. There's much work to be done to close the gaps that keep many First Nations, Inuit, and Métis from fairness and equity in this country. Let us move quickly, hand in hand with Indigenous people, to not only close these gaps, but in doing so, realize the immense opportunities that are possible from an equal and renewed understanding and partnership. A few weeks back, I had the honor to welcome the Nouri family in Newmarket Aurora. They left their home in Afghanistan, believing that the hopes of a brighter future would be found in our community and in Canada, a hope so many around the world share. I've said it before, but I will say it again. We are lucky to call Canada our home. I know how that feels because it was Canada that welcomed my family after World War II. I've seen firsthand the compassion Canadians have for their neighbours and the support that they give to those in need. And when times are tough, Canadians show the courage to brace for what's ahead and the determination to overcome challenges and compassion for their neighbour. In my riding during the most difficult days of the pandemic, I saw community members step up to make sure that no one was left behind. My community inspires me each and every day, and it's thanks to them that I have found the honour to come to this House to work with colleagues from all over the country on advancing their priorities. Together and right now is how we build a better, fairer, and more inclusive Canada for all, the Canada that we all deserve. Thank you, Madam Speaker.